Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Blockbusting, podcast where we love to hate the movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today from cloudy Houston, Texas, Radu Bondar.
Bonanza.
Sup?
Hello.
Hello. It's good to see you.
It's fantastic to see you.
You really sinking into this couch.
I love this couch. I make myself at home, wherever I go, and people hate it.
Yeah.
But I can't help it.
Hey, that's my whole thing on the road.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. This is the cleanest I've allowed my setup over there to be.
Yeah.
My suitcase. I was all taking over this space. Probably
man.
too much.
That's the worst part of the road. Like looking at that suitcase 7 days in, and you're like, did I ever know how to fold anything? Like, am I an organized person?
I tend to pack pretty well, but I feel like I overpacked for this.
Yeah.
That's the downside, is when you know you've brought too much, and you're like, I'm not going to use all this.
You start looking at your clothes. You're like, do I even like this shirt? Can I leave this in Iowa? Like,
I picked up the first day I was out. I did this college in Joplin, Missouri, and I showed up and they're like, "Hey, do you want a shirt with your face on it?" And I was like, "All right, sure."
I have to say yes.
So
to that.
now I have a shirt with my face on it. It's probably going to be a good running shirt. It'll just run with my face on the back, so they can see me coming and going. And they're like, "Oh, okay, that's what this guy's all about."
I'm trying to imagine if I'm a stranger seeing that, and am I intimidated? Like if I'm a woman and I see you at night, am I more scared or less scared?
Probably less.
Yeah, you're like, that guy's not doing well. If he's
It's less up front and then more from behind.
Oh, that's true,
If
yeah.
you see me leaving, you're like, something's up with this guy.
Yeah.
I can't trust this man.
Like, that guy's bold. He's wearing that face twice. Look at him.
Yeah, and it's an old face. It's the young face. It's
amazing.
it's the first headshot I ever had, like proper
Amazing.
headshot.
Amazing.
So I'm like 22, super fresh faced, got longer hair.
It's funny when people do stuff like that and they give you no announcement on it, because you're like, maybe I would have sent you a really high res photo or something. Like I would have helped
know.
make this whatever.
I wish I'd known, because I would have just taken all their leftover shirts.
Yeah.
Like that's easy merch. I'll flip that. I don't mind. They said they made 100 shirts.
They made 100.
Yeah.
And what do they do? What, are they like? Like the Super Bowl losing team? They sent them to Africa when they.
I think so. Well, Joplin's kind of like the
They already
Africa of
need
the
'em there.
Midwest. No, they just gave them away. They were like, anybody who shows up with this special, you got a certain, like a reservation card, and you got a shirt.
Wow.
So I think they gave most of them out. I don't know.
Dude, I can't
didn't
wait.
follow back up on that because I don't have the space to be
can't wait
carrying
to-
around a bunch of shirts.
I can't wait to pass through Joplin, Missouri, and see a bunch of homeless people wearing J-Light faces.
Man, me either. I can't. I'll go back. I'll give them some high fives. I'll give them some stickers. When the album's out, I'll give them a cassette copy. They're the more likely ones to have a Walkman lying around.
People will think it's some sort of cult.
I mean, that's all I strive to be with comedy.
Yeah.
Just a cult leader.
A leader of the lowest caste in society.
Oh yeah. What I don't know anything about caste systems, but I will take
Dude,
over the
you
lowest
are
one.
missing out. One of my favorite parts of politics, which we should bring up. That's what would make us less divided here if we knew where we all stood.
Yeah.
Because you got to figure out with race and money and stuff. But if you just have like a sign, that's it.
It's easy.
I'm level 4. I can't fuck you.
Well, this movie you came to bring today, and I still don't even know where you stand on it as of press time. So
It's hilarious because I was trying to convince myself on the way here to split the baby. I was like, I want to both defend and bust this thing.
but you can't. This is one of those movies. It's divisive.
Yeah.
It's MacGruber.
It's MacGruber, and because it's MacGruber, I think I got to bust it.
All right,
Because
bust away.
It feels pretentious to bust a cult classic. It's like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, clearly people were wrong in the moment, and then it aged into something. But I as much as I like the movie, and I watched it maybe a month ago because it was on the HBO. Like, hey, this is leaving soon, and I'm like, that's hilarious that this was on so long.
Yeah.
Even you're like, leaving soon. This is a 3-year overdose.
I didn't know that this was a mandate viewing.
Yeah. So I had to put it on, and I remember it came out when I was like 15, like 14. It was 10 years ago, And they're about to make it a TV show. It just got greenlit for that. And I love that it age the way it did and people loved it. But it did. We were talking about it last night. It made less money than it cost. It flopped at the box office.
Officially named by Parade magazine as one of the biggest box office bombs of 2010.
Yeah, which is not inconsistent with these SNL like movies, you know? Often character adaptations, just, you know, that people are like, what? This is, you want to take something 3 minutes and make it 90? Okay, let's, you know, figure out how that works. But this wasn't one of those cases. I couldn't tell. I was trying to like build a context. I was like, maybe, what was Tina Fey's movie, Baby Mamas or whatever? Like maybe there was a certain, you know, depression from those kind of movies of like letting us down when these, you know, TV stars left to another thing. It doesn't make sense to me that this movie flopped just on a couple things. First of all, Val Kilmer's in it.
Right.
That often sells enough money to cover your your budget. I don't know if maybe they just paid him scale and he like loved the idea of it or something.
I guess.
I like everything I know about Val Kilmer making movies. Not to go on a bunch of tangents before we break into this, but like, have you heard his shit about how he made the Doors movie?
No.
There's this apocryphal story that you know, there's between him and a couple people to play. Why I can't think of the name of the Doors.
Jim Morrison. Yeah.
And Val in some meeting with the producer or director, or whatever, submitted 4 cassettes. He goes, these are 2 recordings of Jim Morrison singing and 2 of me singing, and if you can tell the difference, you know, I'll bow out of this. And the guy listened for a while, and he's like, I think I figured out. It's these 2 are you, these 2 are him. And he goes, they're all me. And the guy was like, all right, we gotta do this. So that's the kind of guy that was playing Dieter von Kuntz.
Yes.
In this movie.
Val Kilmer, man. And there's a lot of people in this movie that are really like, obviously you get your SNL folks, you got Will Forte, you got Kristen Wiig reprising their roles.
Yeah.
But then you've got like Ryan Phillippe is in this movie, Val Kilmer, Powers Booth. Great actor name, great straight man actor name. And then
Maya Rudolph was in it.
Yeah, Maya Rudolph shows up, and then a bunch of pro wrestlers are in this.
Yeah, that was a great touch to it.
Yeah,
because pro wrestlers are kind of the best people for like fighting and comedy, which this movie sort of tried to split. That's one of the things this movie was trying to do. It was ahead of its time in a way, but I don't think it knew it was.
Yeah.
It was one of those films that was like, you could tell they've prioritized the comedy, the jokes, the gags, all these things. But if they had spent, and this is just, you know, my amateur opinion, if they had spent like 15% more of the resources on like plot and structure, this shit would have been killer. This would have set the tone for like, oh, this is how we make these kind of things now.
Right.
Because if you look at how media transitioned, movies and TV shows, they sort of became that dark element of like, we're going to watch a character grow and it's going to be more dark humor and more real life based, you know, we don't have to make these gags all bombastic. Although I think that still could have worked.
Right.
You know, BoJack Horseman is a perfect example of like, this is some real heart-wrenching, with also just cartoonish, you know, punniness and wordplay and all kinds of stuff.
Right.
So I think there was room for it. It just wasn't necessarily calculated, and I don't think there was as much of a precedent for it before, so they didn't focus on that part.
Yeah. I think that the thing that, for me at least, based on the handful of SNL-based movies that I've seen, the only reason why this it sets itself apart is because they actually focused on doing style over substance. Like the problem with a lot of SNL based movies is they try and expand the sketch and give it like backstory and stuff that makes sense. And in this, they just leaned into the ridiculousness of it and allowed it to adhere to this crazy style of being like an 80s action movie while not really giving any actual meaning to what's going on.
And it was also like, because this is a spoof of MacGyver.
Ostensibly, yeah, and that's the thing. It's, I mean, MacGruber, if you hadn't seen it, 2010 American action comedy film based on the SNL sketch of the same name, which was a parody of MacGyver. And the movie it's not really, like, it doesn't really touch on any of the MacGyver-y things that happen in the sketches. You know, the sketches are all like, all right, hand me that paperclip, hand me that rubber band.
There's a little bit of it. It's almost like that's the part he's overcoming in the movies, getting rid of that MacGyver-y essence or whatever. But what's funny to me is like it's not like you know, there's other SNL stuff that it tends to be very for the moment. It's like, oh, this is why it's got hot, not just because this is a great comedic actor who can do a great impression or whatever. It's also like kind of, you know, of that time. But MacGyver ended in 1994.
Right. It ended that late?
Yeah, like a long time ago. Well, I think it went from, what did this Wikipedia thing say?
MacGyver. Yeah, I mean it goes. Let's see, 1985 to 1992, and then they did the reboot.
Yeah.
Can't forget the MacGyver reboot.
So it's far back there compared to when this spoof happens, you
Right.
know? Which I thought was a good choice because then you're clearly not. Just doing this because this is something that's hot right now, or here this is something that people would want to, like not another teen movie and those kind of like scary movies where they're just like spoofing what we know in our memory short term. You could tell Will Forte really finds some funny in this whole mechanism of this character, but yeah, there's just so much in the structure of it that I loved it as a 15-year-old. I thought it was a perfect movie as a 15-year-old, and now watching it, I can only see the flaws because I still love it. I still really think it's great, and I'm like, oh, if you just move these 4 things around. Will recently said in an article that one of the things he regrets is that gag when they're putting together the crew, and then there's like one guy who's like has a boyfriend now, and so he just scratches
the name out.
And he's like, that's the one, I regret because it's sort of, homophobic and all these things. You're like, yeah, but also during the rest of the movie, MacGyver's character is like offering to blow people whenever things get horrible.
Constantly.
At the back, at his bottom, he's like, I will fuck you.
I'll suck your fucking dick so hard.
Yeah. So the whole thing is riddled with these like inconsistent, because they're, again, just going for the gags and whatever. And you're like, if you regret that one part, I understand. But the whole thing was inconsistent in the first place. You know what I mean? Like the whole... I can't tell where you're going with a lot of this humor connectedly because it's all funny in a vacuum, but all put together, you're like, it's a little jarring.
Yeah.
And then all those guys die right after, which
so quick.
Brutally
which is
dark.
Great.
It's funny when you're not thinking about it. You're like, it's so funny that he kills this whole crew. When you're watching it, hard scene. Tough scene. You just immediately switch from this like 90s sitcom vibe to Schindler's List. You're just in it.
Yeah. It's the pacing of this movie I found very strange because I was like, same boat. When I was, I guess I would have been 20 when this movie came out, and I saw it in theaters, and I was just like loving it. I was like, this is so funny. Yeah. This is wild. Everything's so silly and wacky. And now I'm watching it, and I'm like,
it spoke to the humor of that time too.
Right, exactly. And now I'm watching it, and I'm like, all right, yeah, there's definitely, weirdly enough, pacing issues in a movie that's only 88 minutes long, and there's problems as far as like everything feels kind of weird and condensed, and the jokes don't always land in the first part, and then it gets cooking and hits more by the very end. Yeah, but it's just weird. How did you feel? You saw it when you were 15 in theaters, which is like it feels like the perfect time to go see it in your life.
Yeah, I saw it. I remember hating the previews for it. There's some movies where like the previews really did it no benefits, and they didn't look hacky necessarily, but they did have that like, oh my god, this is another giant corporate comedy movie. And so I was like, I don't think I wanted to go see it. I think it was people were going to see it, and I just kind of went along with it. And then I remember the people watching it that wanted to see it, they were just sort of, whatever. I guess nonplussed or something. And I was like, this is fantastic. Everything about this is concocted so well. But it wasn't one of those movies that you sit and think about it for a long time, which... Looking back now, I regret that it wasn't, because there's plenty of comedy movies that like even Pineapple Express moved me in certain ways. You know what I mean? There's some emotional stuff that was going on below the layer of stupidity.
Right.
You know?
Well, the thing with Pineapple Express is like you're rooting for those two characters. Yeah. It's kind of hard to root for MacGruber.
You go back and
because MacGruber's a real piece of shit in this movie. He's bad. He's a bad man.
And there's some elements that. It's almost like they started realizing that the plot structure could be important and could be a mechanism of comedy when they give him that that PTSD sort of autism quality where he memorizes someone's license plate. Yeah. And at some point they look through one of his notebooks and it's just like schizophrenic scrawling.
It's like, number 23 style.
Yeah. But they didn't that was one of those things that like it came up from the beginning of a movie, and by the middle part it doesn't really come up again. And so it's like, I wish they would have done, like they had so much to play with there. They gave this insane sketch character a background, and they didn't really fulfill it the way you would almost be responsible to in a TV show or movie nowadays. Right. But again, I think it's because like they were like, these mechanisms just work for the humor we're doing. They added a little bit of depth to it, which is probably great for that time. But still, it ends up like appealing sort of to nobody, because at the time it got bad. It was panned by critics.
Right.
It did poorly in the box office. And even though it's a cult classic now, it hasn't aged well.
Yeah.
So it's a movie for no one.
It really is. That's the thing. It's surprising to me to read in the aftermath of all these people saying it's a cult classic. And I watched it again before we recorded.
Did it make you laugh at all?
There were, like I said, there were parts when I laughed, but all of the parts that I laughed at were like at the very end of the movie.
Yeah.
Probably the last 30, 45 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Once they finally, I think the real first time that I started being like, oh, okay, I see where this is going now, is when they go to Von Kunt's house for the first time.
Yes.
And Powers Booth is like, he believes that you're dead. And Will Forte is like, yeah, 100%. And all that stuff starts happening, and they have the whole thing with the senator, and oh my God. And the part with Vicky going to the coffee shop and just being, and MacGruber just being horrible to her, or horrible to the barista via Vicky in the earpiece, and like taking the tip out of the jar. It's just like, it's such high level cringe comedy, which I like. Yeah. But
I'm so sorry. But I'm not sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sorry. Don't tell him you're sorry.
Yeah.
But it's and the cut from this crazy action sequence going on outside to her just like screaming on the floor of the coffee shop.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great editing. It's great comedy. But there's so much in the lead up to that doesn't quite land. Yeah. Because I think it's a pacing problem. Once the jokes start hitting a bit more rapid fire, and you get a scene of like, all right, we're cutting from Will Forte dancing around naked with a stick of celery up his ass, and then you're cutting to like 5 minutes later when he's eating that celery. And just throwaway gags of like, what? Gross. I washed it.
Yeah,
that's funny. But there's so much before that's just like, okay, it's weird. It just doesn't quite get going fast enough for this runaway train kind of energy that picks up by the very end.
I laughed at like 4 or 5 parts, and it was like one of those, because I watched it late at night, like next to my sleeping wife, and you can't laugh too much. You gotta like. I remember there's one of them. I was like, I'm gonna wake this bitch up. Like it's happening, and I think it was actually that scene, the where she's taking the tip back. But one of the things, like you said this now, and it kind of galvanizes what I was sort of thinking about. It's like they had so much great execution in some of the singular jokes in terms of like build up and knowing how long to stretch it out before they start revealing where they're going with the gag or the joke itself. And it's weird that they couldn't apply that same logic or mechanism to scenes or to more, like, you know what I mean? Like more acts of the movie.
Right.
Because if you'd done that, like, MacGruber's immediately incompetent.
Yeah.
Which is funny right away, but you're like, oh shit, there's still 60 minutes of movie here, guys.
Yeah.
How is he going to get through this? And they just sort of patch it up with the other guy being amazing the whole time. And it kind of, you're like, all right, well, part of his incompetence was he wasn't able to call that this guy was good. But you remember he headbutts him.
Yeah.
And the guy he just sort of walks away, and he like can't read MacGruber's, psycho energy.
Right.
And you're like, they're starting to build it up there. If they would have drawn that out maybe 20 more minutes, and we really don't find out he's incompetent until it really matters. I feel like that would have been, just sort of slightly more real, easier to like dive into the movie, feel hooked into the movie. Right. Which is what those 80s action movies were doing. Like, it's almost like by spoofing the mechanism of the movie, they got rid of the one part that actually hooks you in. Because everything else about an 80s action movie is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You don't believe it at all. The villains, are you fucking
Of course not.
Who has the free time? And who has the free time and the henchmen that are like unionized or whatever? It just doesn't, none of it makes sense. But that's the one, emotional plots where you're like, this cop is fucked up and they're gonna, something's gonna happen, and their partner is black, and it's a whole thing, But they just kind of avoided that point in time.
Yeah. It starts out just all homage, and having seen more things now, there's jokes that were like visual jokes that I appreciated, but I didn't necessarily laugh at. And I think at the time, like, the most obvious one for me is in that opening scene or not the sequence where he's going around getting his old crew back, where it's all the wrestlers, and they all do the handshake from Predator.
Oh, yes. I love that.
And they do, but that's the thing. It's like I had no context for that when I saw this movie for the first time. And the only reason I got that is because years later, somebody was like, oh, this is like us doing that Predator handshake. And I was like, what? Oh, okay. And then they showed me that scene, and I was like, oh, okay. And seeing it now, I'm like, oh, yeah, I get this. I see this is a total homage, and it's good. It's well executed.
Yes. Yeah.
But does that make it funny? to me, I wasn't laughing. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I recognize that.
Yeah, I think if you got it in the moment, it's like bonus laughs for certain people can get, which I like those. And a lot of the, my golden era of SNL people who are, just SNL people when I was in high school, they have a great, like Tina Fey is great at this, putting in so many referential things that like, if you get all of them, it's almost like you're too much of a nerd.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff in there for some people that it's like explicitly, counterintuitive to other people's tastes, and there's going to be something for them later. And so I like a lot of those, unpacking the onion or, man, I fucked up that metaphor.
Unpacking slicing the suitcase.
Slicing the suitcase.
Just right down the middle.
Right in the hole. But yeah, I like a lot of that stuff. It was trying to do so many different things. It was splitting the baby.
Yeah.
They tried to do what I wanted to do.
They tried to, and they did. That's the thing. It's so, because there's parts in this movie that I was legit, like when he's having sex with Kristen Wiig, and they have the scene where it's like beforehand and they're playing the music. By the way, the music editing in this movie,
amazing,
great. Probably
soundtrack.
Best part.
If you have a chance, just get the MacGruber soundtrack because it's the best of the '80s.
Fire.
Yes,
but then they have that scene where it's. Yeah, they have it's almost The Room-ish where they have like the curtains are blowing and the moon's hitting them just right and it's so and then you just hear Will Forte just making just like horrifying grunts.
I'm about to spill.
I'm gonna shoot. I'm gonna fill you up. And that part's great. And then same with when he's having sex with Maya Rudolph's ghost.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And you get the first the same trope hits again where it's the music and then you get the noises and they're both making horrible noises this time, so it's like perfect heighten. And then they add the extra heighten where you just see Will Forte just fucking the air on top of a headstone.
It's almost, I almost want to go back and just like the movie should redeem itself just for those two sex scenes because they're shocking. They were like crazy funny when I was a kid, and they still made me laugh, like a loud laugh when I watched it. But I had seen nothing like that, and you realize like later. There's been plenty of historic comedy fuck scenes,
right?
But to do it so differently, like all the time, they always go for the same bombastic sort of thing. It's that Dolomite, the room is shaking and the walls are, whatever. And this was just the first of like going that opposite direction of like this is horrible sex, and it blew me away. And there's a lot of choices like that they make. And that one seems to be the most consistent with the MacGruber character. You're like, of course he fucks like this.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he? He's purely incompetent. But the whole incompetence, when you circle back to it, you're like, so why does the CIA fuck with him so much? Like,
that's the thing too. It's like
it's so hard to tie it all in.
There's some element. I think Will Forte is one of the best comedic performers to ever to go through like modern SNL.
Yeah.
I love Will Forte's commitment to wacko characters.
Yeah.
I've always loved him on like, SNL. I thought he was great. He was always one of my favorite sketches on Tim and Eric. And he's really given it his all in this.
Yes.
And I love that.
Yeah.
But there's just if there was any reason for the Golden Globes to give him a nomination for like best comedy performance, he totally deserved it for what he did in MacGruber.
Yeah.
Just because he's such a fucking psycho and straight-faced psycho the whole time.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even consider like the level of his acting because that's the one sort of underrated part of this movie. He's fucking in it the whole time.
But it's so hard to balance out how absurd he is with a whole host of straight-faced characters who are playing straight man to him the whole time, but in a way that doesn't feel completely. It doesn't feel like it makes sense in the crazy world of this movie.
Yeah.
I wish that you hit the nail on the head in a way that I was having trouble thinking about before, where it's like they didn't. If he's so incompetent, to the point where he is afraid of guns and is throwing guns away after he finishes shooting them, how did he get to this point? How do we trust this man?
How did he steal Val Kilmer's girlfriend in the first place?
Right. Oh my God. He's not fucking well.
That was another really funny, a really great part of like. Because in that moment, you sort of realize, you're like, is MacGruber the villain the whole time? Did he create all of this?
Kind of did.
He sort of did.
It's all his own fault.
Yeah, and in that sense, you're like, oh, this is a chaos movie then. And that if it just picked a thing and it was that the whole time, I think everybody could have just gotten it, But I think at the time, you had to be so I don't know, comedy savvy and also have this same 80s action movie obsession that clearly Will Forte did.
Right.
For this movie to really hit you in the way that I think he wanted it to, that it was just so few people, but the few people that I bet it that got all of it were like, this is Godfather 2.
Right.
This is some crazy shit.
By the way, I'm glad that you know Godfather 2 is better than Godfather.
It's clear.
I'm glad we're on the same page on that one.
I'm only 25, but I do.
You understand.
I know what I know.
I figured that out when I was 25. I'm with you. I think if I had to really boil it down, I think that they did the best with what they created. This is the best. I couldn't imagine anyone else directing this movie and doing it better than Jorma Taccone did. I don't think that anybody could have given they wrote the script that they did. They put in the performances they did. I don't think it could have been better, but
this is the one because the casting again, if you break down the elements, you're right, totally. But you just fucking give Aaron Sorkin a 6-week consulting fee. Get him in there.
You know what I mean? Some of these dialogue scenes.
Somebody who's like, let me tell you how people interact.
Right.
Why
you can get away with it being totally wacky as long as there's some element of groundedness to it, and it's in total crazy town the whole time.
Yeah.
That's the only real thing that the movie is sort of designed to be a runaway train that goes off the rails, but it goes off the rails too early, and then they kind of spend the rest of the movie trying to corral it back onto the track.
I know, yeah. And so you're like, I don't know fully what I'm watching, but the level of comedy is so good, it carries this thing in a way that almost that in of itself is a very unique experience. Not a lot of things that bomb have this one redeeming, almost Jordan-esque quality,
Yeah.
Except for with no Pippen around. Just one star, just one LeBron right now trying to carry this thing to a place it's not going.
There's parts that I was reading about in the production process that kind of make me wish I could have seen the version of this movie that they initially conceived. Originally, it was they were afraid it was going to get an NC-17.
Whoa!
Yeah, which imagine
the fuck scenes. Probably,
yeah,
huh?
well, I don't know, maybe even with the celery scene. I bet they probably didn't like.
They wanted to show that whole hole.
Yeah, listen, you got Will Forte. Maybe Will Forte wasn't covering his dick, cupping it in his hands the whole time at first. Who knows? But it would have been great if they would have just been. It's just like another layer.
That scene actually was so funny to me because, I'm I've lived my whole life in America, but I also because I spent time in Romania. I was born there. I have to think about the difference in censorship between the U.S. and Europe. And it's so funny to show a man with his celery stick protruding from his anus.
Right.
But then he's covering his genitals as if that's the truly offensive part.
Right. I mean, we got weird fucking censorship laws, man. Did you ever see this film is not yet rated?
Oh, I know about it. I didn't see it.
It's a fascinating documentary. It's all about how the MPAA and how it all operates.
I know a lot about that. It's a cartel is what that shit is. They're
exactly.
a bunch of bullshit fucks. They started because it used to be just PG. That was the only is PG and then R.
Yeah.
And PG-13 comes in and fucks up everything. And the reason this stuff, if you're listening to this part of the podcast, you're like, are you fucking serious? These guys are about to break down the rating system. It's fucking important.
It is.
Because Tom Cruise won't do R-rated movies. That's why, what's it called? The one with the Robert Downey Jr. blackface. What's that movie?
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder is such a great exception because Tom Cruise has fucking fought his whole, studio deal to get in on
right
just to be the sixth lead in that or whatever.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. There's movies, I mean, if it's bringing up Tropic Thunder, there's a lot of movies that are
about another movie
comedies.
that kind of went down this sort of line, yeah.
But there's comedy movies that you can take dumb comedy and do it in a very good and smart way. And Tropic Thunder, I think, is one of those movies that it hits the apex of that. And I think that's why it got so acclaimed. Because it is so inherently ridiculous, but they temper it with the fact that everybody's in real danger this whole time. Because they're even though it's like a drug cartel led by a Vietnamese child.
Yeah, they balance that tension so well.
You have Robert Downey Jr. in blackface the whole time. You got Jack Black with bleached blonde hair, just
oh my God.
withdrawing from coke and opiates the whole time.
In 20 years, it's going to be really hard to explain that movie was made. At all. Because they're all still going to be alive, probably.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it got Oscar nominated. You know, that's so crazy to me that people were like Robert Downey Jr. was like a lock, and people are like Tom Cruise could probably get an Oscar nomination for this
comedies get Oscar? It's like Annie Hall,
right? Annie Hall, Bridesmaids. But it's so. I wish that there's like. I think it also says a lot about SNL based movies that this still, even as a movie that's very all over the place, still finds the way of being like one of the top. That people reflect back and be like, this is a good SNL movie.
Yeah.
Like this is as close as it's going to get.
I mean, we were like kind of talking about it in the green room at the Secret Group last night, and I brought up that I was going to do the movie on the podcast, and Grady, another comedian, was like, "Oh, I've heard it's supposed to be fantastic."
Yeah.
Like, people in comedy are like, "I've heard it's a hit, it's a slam," and you're like, "It sort of is, but it's hard to contextualize it. It's actually a really interesting experiment." And I'm fascinated for the TV show. That's got to be because sometimes I like a TV show when the movie's kind of sucked because you're like, oh, we get a second chance. But I don't know how everyone feels about this and what direction they're going to go. And
I don't know.
Is there a show in this? Because if I'm watching the sketches in the movie and someone's like, there's a whole 3-season arc here, I'm like, show me, because I don't fucking get it at all.
I'd watch it, and I mean, I as long as they get the same creative team, if they get the Lonely Island guys in there again, I think it would be great, and I think it'll pan out. But again, it's a very specific. This can only work with a very specific set of creative minds behind it, and I think that if they don't get that recipe right, then it's not going to go over well.
You know what I just realized?
What?
And it's, I guess, again, slightly tangential, but you know how people always say no one watches SNL anymore? And you're like, I guess that's kind of true. But also, like, we're at the height of SNL alumni, like, having their own shows and movies and whatever. And Lauren is like an executive producer or a co-executive producer on all of those things.
Right, yeah.
And so you're like, I don't think he cares if people are watching SNL. They're watching all of his shit.
No, of course.
On everything.
He's
HBO,
cashing
NBC, Netflix. Like,
all the checks no
whole
matter
thing,
what.
Yeah, this motherfucker is like, I can't even think of a franchise that has this good of recruit. He's like the Yankees. He's the whole thing.
I mean, there's a reason why people, everybody said like nobody watches SNL anymore, but SNL is still one of the most coveted comedy jobs because of what it does in the machine that you become a part of.
And I think this MacGruber is a very, very good example of like if you wrote a whole movie SNL sketch style, because it does have that SNL feel of like if you watch a whole, and I love Saturday Night Live. I'm a real big proponent of it.
Yeah.
If you watch a whole episode, no matter how much you love it, and you love sketch comedy, you're not going to love 100% of it ever.
Right. I've never watched a whole SNL episode and been like, that was home runs the entire time.
Yeah. It's like a good pitcher. Like if they get, whatever, they had 3 runs. That's great. That's fantastic.
It's good batting average.
They only shit the bed 3 times. That's perfect for what this thing is. And if they ever threw a new no-hitter, you're like, oh my God, don't even talk about it. Like,
right.
It's nuts. But that's how I felt with this movie. It's honestly the same sort of like, the whole 1 hour sketch show vibe. You're like, there's parts of this where it goes down almost the same way that an hour long sketch show would. You're like, all right, I can't buy into this the whole time,
right?
Because it's too zany. You gave me not enough of my own reality in this.
Yeah, and it's kind of, I mean, it feels like the scenes themselves could work as individual sketches. Like I could see some of this stuff being played just as clips on YouTube.
Oh, that's interesting. If you made it now, and it was like a web series kind of thing, yeah, maybe people would break it down into like these 15-minute or 10-minute episodic things. And then you're like, all right, that's how I can digest this pure insanity, is just these short increments. Because there is a tension when you watch the movie. Anytime they're about to get caught, or there's a tension dynamic to it, but it's not the same as when you're watching a movie where they've really caressed it the whole time and really brought you to a place of like, oh, could this be it? Like, because it's never it. Any movie, it's never it ever. But in this movie, the whole time you're like, I think they're fine. I think it's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay.
Yeah,
that's, man.
I see the celery. He's gonna be fine.
He's gonna be all right. And we got the nice celery callback. Ryan Phillippe puts it in his ass. That's everything we've been waiting on the whole time.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So I will say, Ryan Phillippe, come on, dude, go for the full commit. You got to cover your dick too, dude. Don't just
I know,
pull down part of your pants.
So like, come on, it's a team. You're his partner.
Yeah.
Ride or die.
If you could go back in time to when this movie, if you're to like your 15-year-old self, maybe not the exact time period. If there was a movie, an R-rated comedy that you would tell yourself at age 15 that you should go watch instead of MacGruber, what would it be?
Well, it was Tropic Thunder. I watched Tropic Thunder around that same time. I think Tropic Thunder had already come out in like 2008 or something like that, and I had avoided watching because the same. I thought the previews were sort of. I was a really bohemian 15-year-old. I was like, look at these previews. Who made this? Who's the editor? And I whatever just turned me off. And also,
Just turn away, flip your scarf away in a huff.
Yeah. I've never liked the movie, like going to the movies, even as a kid. Which
Really?
That's when you really love it. It's not my experience. I love talking through the whole shit. I like a private movie theater, just you and 8 dudes, screaming at the fucking screen.
Yeah.
Or it's me at my house, Netflix, me and my wife, and I'm just explaining the whole thing to her while she's like, "Shut up! I just want to watch this."
Right.
And that's my preferred. So I watched Tropic Thunder like I think on a bootleg or something when LimeWire was still happening.
Oh, LimeWire.
I don't think I made a connection between the two at the time either. Of like, oh, this is a more successful version of what this other one was trying to do. Like at the time, a lot of Seth Rogen was happening.
Yeah.
So this did seem like a different flavor of like Seth was really going for a lot of like college sort of humor, and the Will Forte stuff really felt like a lot of like alty, independent comedy kind of Chicago sketch shit.
Yeah. Seth Rogen's never going to show up in a Tim and Eric episode, but Will Forte, 100%.
Probably more than you want him to. So yeah, I don't know. At the time, and again, I'm still not that much of a movie person. I'm TV or die. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's something about like the way my commitment works with it. I'm like, sure, they're hour-long episodes, but I can stop anytime I want. You know? Not watch 9 of them in a row. But yeah, I think if I would have told my 15-year-old self, I would just tell myself to watch the movie again, to watch MacGruber, and try to figure out what you think is wrong with it. Because if I had that deconstruction ability at a younger age, I'd be doing a much more successful podcast right now. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I'm speaking as somebody who the first R-rated movie I saw in theaters was Snakes on a Plane, so I've got no bearing.
That would actually be a really great.
It was a great one.
Because then every other R-rated movie you watch is gonna overpass that by so much.
Snakes on a Plane, I still maintain is one of the best modern B movies, and I will stand by that till I die.
I could see that. I remember they made a music video for some reason.
Yeah,
with Pete Wentz from Fall Out Boy.
Yeah, it was like the weird
Class Heroes guy,
Hot Topic supergroup.
Yeah, it was the first like. If people did that now, it would be so much more common. You're like, oh, movie's coming out, so they did an Instagram sketch and a music video, whatever. Like, we just see it all as content now. At the time, in like 2007, you're like, what are these fucks doing? You want me to watch a music video and a movie? Who do you think I am?
Come on. Get off my MySpace page with that autoplay bullshit.
What am I, made of Comcast? I don't have time for all this. It's insane.
Well, I am glad that I was able to revisit this thanks to you. So thanks for bringing this movie back into my life briefly,
This was so
Radu.
much fun. This was... we could have spent all this energy on something so productive, too.
Nah, who cares?
But this is the most fun.
Fuck productivity.
This is what it's about.
Where can the listeners find you on the social media?
At Radu Bondar. I'd spell it out for you, but fuck you.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Figure it out. It's in the show notes.
Say it into your Google whatever thing. Hey, Google, say this thing. And whatever it comes up with, you follow that person, even if it's not my name.
There you go. You can find me at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com for show dates. Let's see, what else?
Where are you going to be, Jay?
I'll be in LA when this comes out, but I'll be back out in some a little bit of road stuff coming up in December. So keep your eyes peeled if you're in like New Orleans, Dallas, Asheville, North Carolina, and possibly Atlanta. I got to confirm some things.
TBA.
Yeah, you'll see. Check it out. You know where to go. Join the Facebook group, join the Patreon, tell a friend, and that's it, guys. This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.
One love.
Let's both point at the camera at the same time.
Hey-o.
Hey.